And while we're on the topic of shifting things in and around the city, there is a suggestion that one of the things we might look to move is the city's golf courses, because an architectural firm in the UK has mocked up plans to build hundreds of homes at a North London golf club. The proposals are for 650 homes to be built on Enfield Golf Club's 18-hole course. And of course, here in Ireland, there are a fair few golf courses knocking around the areas where housing could equally fit. With us is Feljin Jose, who is chairperson of the Dublin Commuter Coalition, as well as Off the Ball's Nathan Murphy. Feljin, let me start with you. I assume, given the title of you being chairperson of the Dublin Commuter Coalition, you would like to see a lot of people commuting from what are currently empty spaces.
I think I speak more broadly, to be honest, but like there's golf courses like Clontarf that are built right beside a railway line where there is no station. That there was a proposal about 2 years ago which said it could house 5,000 homes. Like, we need more homes, but we need more homes in good places, not in Kildare. If people like the Dublin, basically housing in Dublin has reached Kildare. It shouldn't sprawl that much. But when there's land,
a lot of commuters I would have thought would say it had gone far beyond Kildare.
Yeah, it has. Like, it's a continuous row of housing from the city centre out to Kildare. Like, while there's land for golf courses, not just golf courses. Like, there was a debate about 3 weeks ago where Minister Ryan was saying that there's land at Dublin Port that Dublin Port are using for 2,500 cars when they import them. They probably shouldn't be parked in the middle of the city.
But there is, of course, the balance to be made up about civil amenities. You could point to New York and say that big green bit in the middle is worth a lot of money, we should build on it. But there is a balance to the quality of life that the people in the city live. In the same way, I'm sure those who live both around and who use those golf courses would say they provide an amenity.
They do, but they don't provide amenities to, say, the same level of people as a football club would, or a rugby club would, or a GAA club, you know? The kind of density of people using a golf course is very, very low for the amount of land they take up. A football pitch, 100 metres by 70 metres, whatever it is, could be used by hundreds of people every week.
The one thing we are not short of when you get outside the pale, Nathan, is land. There's quite a lot of it knocking around. We are one of the least densely populated countries in Europe when it comes to the rural side of the country. Why, therefore, could you not take the golf course spaces that exist within Dublin and say, build houses on them, and if you want to go play golf, do it in the Midlands, do it nice parkland courses, do it out in the West, wherever, just not in the middle of the city.
Well, I'm delighted to be here to speak for the poor downtrodden golfers of Dublin, and it's very hard to make the case when we're in such a housing crisis that golf courses deserve their place. And there is that line, it's very hard to travel from North to South Dublin without passing a pub. It's very hard to travel from North to South Dublin and pass a golf course. There aren't many golf courses in central Dublin. If you look inside that commuter belt, if you look inside the M50, you're at half a dozen golf courses. And yes, there are some such as Clontarf, Milltown, Ellen Park that are in very condensed areas that will be worth enormous amounts of money. And we have seen.
Hang on a minute, Nathan. Let's not understate this. It's just off the top of my head. You have Deer Park, Sutton, Howth, St Anne's.
I think they're inside the M50.
They're
just
not
outside.
Where are you defending? Did you put them on the south side?
I think if you look at places like, you know, the Grange, Edmondstown, which are around Marley Park, which is a brilliant facility and can cover all of the other things that people want in terms of amenities, that there should be a place for golf. Golf is a very accessible sport throughout the country. But the argument is that there
is a place for golf, just put it outside the M50. You have literally
You can't put everything outside the M50 except for housing. There has to be, as you say, amenities for different people. So yes, lots of people want to play football. We have lots of football pitches. We should have more football pitches. We should have more Astro pitches so that when we've had the weather we've had, that the kids of Dublin get to play football at the weekends and not every game is called off in a public park.
So there you are, Feljin. You're effectively all for the destruction of the quality of life in the city.
I think it should be reviewed on a case basis. Like you said, Elm Park, Milltown, Clontarf. There's one Elm Green at the Blanchardstown exit of the M50.
Elm Green is a public course.
Yeah, they were talking about rezoning it, but then didn't. But like that is right on a railway line. That is right at the M50. That is big land, and there's going to be housing right beside it, but just not on it. And like Clontarf, it's right on a railway line. Similarly, like Howth, if you look at Howth,
Sutton's right on a railway line?
Most of Howth is actually a golf course. It's not nature. Like
Deer Park is right on a railway line.
I think there's plenty of nature within the golf course as well. Look, I think
Now,
Clontarf
hang on a
Golf
minute,
Club, we've
Nathan. Can I
seen...
put an argument to you, though, that you talked about the golf courses, or you talked about football pitches and all the rest of it. There are people who will get their football boots, put them in a bag, get in a bus, go to a local park, play football. There's precious few people, I would have thought, showing up to golf courses on the bus with their golf bags. So if they're going to get in a car and drive to a golf course, what's to stop them driving a couple of extra minutes outside Dublin rather than inside the city limits?
Well, I think that says more about our public transport setup than it does about the golf courses and the fact, I think if you're on the tube in London, you'll often see people carrying their golf clubs around.
But my point being, we have what we have, which is people driving to courses. So what harm if they have to drive an extra 20 minutes?
What harm if you do extra 20 minutes for anything? I think if it's there, accessible, you've been a member of that club for years and years. Now, this is happening, by the way, what you're talking about. So we've seen Dunleary Golf Club about 20 years ago. They moved out to closer to Enniskerry. It's still called Dunleary Golf Club, but it's most certainly not in Dunleary. It's about 10 miles away from its original spot. Clontarf Golf Club, just before the crash.
Which likewise isn't exactly in Clontarf.
They were offered, I think it was around €100,000 each per member to move out of the city, and for various different reasons it didn't happen. But there has been talk again recently of developers looking at that site in Clontarf and potentially moving further out. But there is obviously a prestige that comes with being a member of Clontarf Golf Club, that wherever they move to, it'll still need to be called Clontarf Golf Club.
Say that again. They were offered €100,000 per member
to move out to in or around Charlie Haughey's former residence out there.
Wow.
They
per
accepted
member.
Per member.
Well, if that's what it costs to get these golf courses, Feljin, do you think the state can afford it?
Clontarf Golf Course is actually owned by Dublin City Council. The land, it's leased to Clontarf Golf Club. So I don't know what the buyout thing is, but like it leased to Clontarf for, I think, like €30,000 per year. Like, I'd love a rent like that for 75 acres of land. Like that should be used for housing, parks, more nature. Like, golf courses don't have a lot of nature in it.
There's a fair bit of nature. You have trees and squirrels and birds and all that
Grass
crack.
isn't nature, though. It really isn't. I mean, when you look at most public parks, I argue that they have more nature than golf courses, which are kept well groomed, and
you'll find golf courses are amongst the most well groomed and manicured parts of nature that you'll find around this city.
They shouldn't be wilder. It should be wilder. It shouldn't be that well groomed. You know,
But you're talking about turning them into houses
and parks.
Well, steady. Like, if we're going to put several hundred or several thousand houses onto this, you are going to be at a great net diminution of the amount of nature that'll be knocking around when these are turned into housing estates.
Well, there's requirements for like the ratio between housing and public land or private public parks these days, so you can't just build 100% housing on any land. It has to be, I think, 30-40% parks and amenities and stuff like that, which could be a lot more biodiverse than.
Which is a point that's matched by some of the texts coming in. And by the way, 53106 is a cost of 30 cent, or 087 1400 106. Lads, how many houses and apartments would fit into Phoenix Park? This is the slippery slope.
Well, where do you finish? And surely, if we're looking at housing solutions, there are better targets initially than golf courses. We need to go higher. We need to add more stories. We need to increase density in the city centre. And there needs to be a space for amenities. So if we're looking at Clontarf Golf Club, are we going to start looking at St. Anne's Park? Are we going to start looking at Marley Park? And actually think of the amount of houses we could build there. We could keep half the park. We could build another 10,000 houses. But look at the facility. Look at the thousands of people that are there every week. And yes, it's a hard sell at times on golf courses, particularly in central Dublin when you look at the joining fees. But golf in general in this country is an incredibly accessible sport. Just look at our successful golfers and their backgrounds. Look at Shane Lowry, Rory McIlroy, Padraig Harrington, all come from very middle class backgrounds. Outside of the central Dublin area, the fees aren't crazy. Well, some of these courses,
when you
they might get there.
Juxtapose those two with the thing of the joining fees, there's not many of the courses that we have been talking to that are talking about are cheap and accessible to the average person. And a text saying, this just stinks of elitist, lefty, socialist, anti-capitalist Ireland. Let's all build housing courtesy of the hard-pressed taxpayers for whom exactly. But to some extent, this is greatly in favour of the elites, isn't it? Because it's mostly the elites who are in these clubs.
I think for kids, there's certainly easy ways to access all of these clubs. Undoubtedly, as you get older, the fees are probably back up to where they were, Celtic Tiger levels of 10, 15,000 entry fee, and then anywhere from 1,800 to 2,000 per year membership. But
is that what it is?
Post-COVID,
but it's 10k just to get in the door.
Certain clubs At the moment, yeah, it'll be back up on that level once again. If you can get, the other thing is, if you can get in the door, because post-COVID, obviously, golf has had an enormous spike in terms of memberships, and clubs were crying out for members 4 or 5 years ago, whereas now there are waiting lists at almost all the major clubs around Dublin.
Now, I should say, because I know that there will be people who are members of and representative of some of the clubs that we have been talking about, some of these clubs don't have anything like those kind of introductory fees, and you can get into them and you can pay direct green fees at nothing like those kind of costs. But some of them are in that category. Interesting point here, Feljin, suggesting that this is prejudiced against a certain cohort of people that has nothing to do with money. It says there's plenty of spare land in Dublin without taking up more green space, and golf is particularly played by middle-aged and older people. So what you're effectively doing is striking against those who are middle-aged and older.
Like I said at the beginning, for me, it's not just about golf. It's about efficient use of land in the city. I mentioned the car park in Dublin Port that we were talking about a couple of weeks ago. Like, we shouldn't be storing imported cars in the middle of the city. That should be outside the city. Jamestown Industrial Estate was rezoned by Dublin City Council about 2 years ago. They drew up a master plan for, I don't remember how many hectares, basically about 4,000 houses, what is an old industrial estate. It's about looking at, like, there really isn't that much land in Dublin. Okay, there's loads of land in the country, but you want to build houses where people want to live. You want to build houses where people don't have to commute for 2 hours, don't have to drive. When you look at that, you do have to look at industrial estates and car parks. There's the car park beside Clontarf Dodge Station, which is owned by Dublin City Council, but is leased to a private company for, I think, around 35,000 euro per year. And it was a 20-year lease signed about 20 years ago. And they're talking about renewing it for 20 more years tonight at the Dublin City Council meeting. So, like, there's loads of underutilised land which could be used for efficient uses.
A final thing on this, Nathan, one of the things is the NIMBYism element, because the courses that we have been talking about, with very few exceptions, these are in some of the most wealthy, most salubrious parts of Dublin, which I assume is part of why the locals are able to say no chance that this is going to turn into housing.
Absolutely. And there are any amount of clubs then around the commuter belt, around the M50, that are more accessible, that are probably more reasonable in terms of their entry fees. But yeah, the power that the membership of these clubs have is enormous. Quite often it goes through the generations, and generations of families have been members of these clubs. So there's a lot that goes into being a member of the best clubs in Dublin, and there's obviously a place in society that goes with that as well, and they don't want to lose it. And you know, if you live around the corner from one of these clubs, you don't want to suddenly have to go 20 miles down the road, even if they are giving you 100 grand for the pleasure.
If you have any view, 53106 at a cost of 30 cent, or you can get us 087 1400 106. That is our very own Nathan Murphy from Off the Ball, and of course co-host of Golf Weekly, and Feljin Jose, who is chairperson of the Dublin Commuter Coalition. Now we'll give you a reminder on the cash machine.